Ed Bates from Kilworth Chiropractic Clinic, and welcome to today's Daily Dose. So today I thought I'd tackle another common source of toxin that is certainly prevalent in our diets, and I'm talking about grains. Now, whilst our bodies do have a built-in detoxification system, it does have limits. And unfortunately, these days, when we consider the typical diet that people eat, this system is being overworked and overstretched. In fact, 70% of the total calories that we eat and consume every day comes from grains, industrial seed oils, and refined sugars. In other words, the average diet is toxic. So why are grains so bad? Are they not meant to be healthy, or heart healthy? Well, as it turns out, that's not true, as most data is based on very inconclusive studies, or they're just comparing whole grains to refined grains, but they're still talking about grains. But the main reason grains are not good for us is because they contain certain toxic chemicals. You see, plants, like animals, have an imperative to survive and reproduce. But unlike animals, they can't run away from predators. So over the millennia, plants have evolved alternative protective mechanisms and strategies, including producing certain toxins that, for example, can damage the lining of the gut or bind to essential minerals, making them unavailable, or even produce toxins themselves that inhibit the digestion and absorption of nutrients. And two of these toxic compounds are phytates and the protein gluten, which comprises 80% of the protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. It's also worth noting that gluten can also be found, albeit in smaller amounts, in other grains such as oats and corn. So why is gluten so bad for us? Well, for starters, it can damage the lining of our gut. And when it damages the lining of our gut, that causes the gut wall to become more permeable, which then allows proteins and gut microbes to leak across into the blood supply, hence the term leaky gut. And this can then lead to a chronic inflammatory response. And inflammation can, over time, lead to various autoimmune and significant health problems. Now, that said, some people are more tolerant to gluten than others. However, it's now thought that most of us are intolerant to a degree. Now, as I mentioned, grains also contain compounds called phytates, which are basically anti-nutrients that bind onto minerals and vitamins and prevent them from being absorbed, which is obviously not a good thing. Another significant problem with grains is that they are largely devoid of healthy nutrients. Let me say that again. They're devoid of healthy nutrients. You see, for proper physiological function, our bodies require about 40 different minerals, vitamins, and micronutrients. And suboptimal intake of any of those will contribute to disease and ultimately a shortened lifespan. And that's exactly what we see with our typical energy-laden, nutrient-devoid, grain-based Western diets. Now, you may be thinking, how come, if grains contain little in the way of nutrients and contain gluten and phytates, and they are so potentially toxic, how come they are referred to as healthy? Well, that's a great question. And there are certainly several reasons for our over-reliance on grains, in that they're relatively cheap to produce and they have the added bonus of being easy to store. And when those factors are coupled with the misguided fear of animal foods that's so prevalent these days, it's understandable why there is so much emphasis on grains in our diet. However, the evidence indicates strongly that grains are a suboptimal food source when compared to meat, fish, vegetables, fruits, and nuts. Now, does this mean that you should strictly avoid them? Not necessarily, because some of you may be able to tolerate them in moderation, especially if you prepare them properly. And what I mean by that is soaking, sprouting, or fermenting them. That said, grains and pulses should never, ever replace more nutrient-dense foods. Also, for some of you, unfortunately, even a gluten-free diet may not be enough because you're too sensitive. And on that note, have a fabulous day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy. And we'll see you tomorrow.